Hello friends, for you today I have worn my pom-pom earrings. In case my words bore you, you can be entertained by my accessories. So let's get it. Quickly, I wanted to just kind of give you a scan of a MLA research paper, point out a couple of things that you'll need to keep in your mind as you're writing your own. And so I just kind of wanted to point out quickly a few of the key and the important things about MLA format, okay? Okay, so we have an example paper here. If you are clever enough with technology that you know how to do a header or a page number kind of thing, technically in MLA they do ask you to put your last name and then have some pagination. If it's going to take you 7 hours and you're going to cry and you're never going to figure it out, even when you've called 5 of your closest friends and your great aunt Mabel, save those 7 hours and the tears and just let it go. Let it go. It's not going to make the difference between a B and a C, an A and a B, whatever. So if you can do it, great, because it is technically a requirement. But if it breaks your heart into tiny pieces, don't worry about this little header and pagination. However, you should for sure have a heading here with your name, with my name. Can you spell it right? There's your test. Name of the class, the date, okay? Also, your paper should have an original creative title. So if you are writing about recycling, please do not title your paper recycling, okay? Call it crushed cans and shards of paper. Recycling in the 21st century, something. So give it a title. You will notice that every major word in a title is capitalized. Smaller words like prepositions of or coordinated conjunctions and not capitalized. Always, no matter what the word is, you capitalize the first and the last word of any title. Okay? And then your paper should be double spaced. When you start a new paragraph, you should indent it. Yeah, okay. But I want to show you just a little bit about how the research is incorporated. So we have a paragraph here. The scholar and critic Jay Anderson writes about the social possibilities of recreation, saying that, quote, then we have this quote from Jay Anderson. Then we have right here the page number in the source. So many things these days, especially if they're online sources, do not have page numbers. If you have sources with no page numbers, guess what? You simply don't include the page numbers in the parenthetical citation. In this case, though, there is a page number, so we have 298. What's important when you look at this little bit that's been taken from an outside source is we know who the author is because we are told within the text. We know this is Jay Anderson. We know the page number. Also, it's clear what words are quoted directly from the source without being changed. Let's say that I'm into whatever the student's writing about, and I'm thinking, well, this Jay Anderson source, this looks kind of interesting. Maybe I want to read this thing. How can I find it? All right, take your Dramamine. We're about to scroll. End of the paper, you will have something called a Works Cited page. Every source that you have referred to within your paper should be listed on the Works Cited page. These are the names of the works that you have cited within the text of your paper. Please notice it is not Works Cited, and that these words are not in bold, they're not underlined, they're not italicized. You don't need any like colon after it, so it's just centered and the words Works Cited. Then you will have alphabetized your sources on this page. Generally speaking, each entry will start with the author's last name, a comma, and the author's first name. So remember, I was interested in Jay Anderson. Woo, what can't Jay Anderson write about? So I thought, let me go see what I want to know more about this source in case I want to find it. All right, so we have Anderson, comma, Jay. And I know now that the name of the article is Living History, Simulating Everyday Life in Living Museums. Where was it published? Jocelyn wonders. It was published in American Quarterly, and it was in volume 34, number 3, and it appeared in 1982. The pages are 290 through 306. So the quote that appeared within the paper, I know, was from page, let's see, what was it, 291? 298, forgot. Okay, so it needs to be clear within your paper where you got the information. So what's the source? And so you want to use an acknowledgement phrase that tells us the name of the author, or you can use the name of the article. And I also, as this paper goes on, and we look at other places, we see we're still talking about J. Anderson here because, you know, Anderson is doing this, he writes this. We have another quote, we've got the page number. Same thing happens down here. I can tell there's some information taken from that same page. And so now we're going on to the American Studies critic and former historical reenactor, Amy Tyson. Notice too how the sort of the credentials and expertise of the author is being given. That lends weight to the research that you're bringing in. It gives it a kind of authority. So we know that Amy Tyson wrote an article here. We have the title of it in quotation marks, Men with Their Muskets and Me and My Bare Feet. And it talks about what's going on at Fort Snelling Living History Museum. Okay. At the end of the information taken from the Amy Tyson article about men with their muskets, we get a page number. So we've got that again. Okay. That parenthetical citation tells us. And then you might think to yourself, all right, we're still talking about Amy Tyson, but why in this parenthetical citation do we see the word men in quotation marks and a page number? Well, this student writer is helping us see which of the two articles from Amy Tyson that are used in this paper, which one of those two was this information taken from? Oh, I hope you can hear the train going by. When I'm filming this, it's tourist season and it's a rainy day and the trains are going up and down, taking the tourists up to Leicester Park and back again. So enjoy that horn blowing. Okay, so we're talking about Amy Tyson. I'm going to scroll you again real fast here down to the Works Cited page. All right, when we look at Amy Tyson, we see there's an article here that Ms. Tyson wrote, and these dashes right here tell us it's a second article by that same author. So this is also Tyson, comma, Amy, but you just use these dashes. And we see that there's a second article written by the same author. So we have two from Amy Tyson that are used. And so in that parenthetical citation earlier in the paper, the student writer is making it clear which of those two articles that quote came from. And when you have a long title, it's okay to just use the first word. That's why the student put men in quotation marks, kind of representing the entire title there, so you didn't have to type out the whole thing. If it had come from the other article, it would just be crafting in quotation marks. Okay, so it's enough to just use that first word, but it needs to always be clear to your readers, not only like who's the author, where this quote or paraphrase or summary come from, but if you have more than one work from the same author, we need to know which of those works is it from. So always think to yourself, it's better to oversight, to give too much information, just to make sure my readers know where I got this stuff. So better to overcompensate than to confuse people, okay? What else did I want to show you in here? So we have right here, so here we had this is where we kind of left off, men 43. But now we have another quote from Tyson, but notice how it's set up differently. And that's because when you have a quotation that is 4 lines in length or longer, so basically a long quote, when you have a long quote, you block it. That means you indent it. It's still double spaced, it's not single spaced. And you use a regular right-hand margin. That doesn't change. So you just indent it on the left. And then at the end, bizarrely, the period comes before the parenthetical citation. Normally, when you have a shorter quote, so if you look up here, for example, the period is coming after the citation. But when you have a block quote, you put the period before the parenthetical citation. Why? I do not know. Could I look it up? Probably. Can I be bothered? Clearly not. All right, so we've got Tyson, Tyson, Tyson. Now we're moving on to a quote from Sarah Ahmed. Please note whenever a quotation is used, it's never dropped into the paper to stand by itself as a separate sentence. Nay, my friends, nay. It is always integrated into a sentence that the student writer has created. So you can give it a lead in, you can give it kind of a tag, kind of a rights feminist critic, so you always have to kind of like massage that quote a little bit. You can bookend it so that you don't let the quote do the heavy lifting. You, the writer, do the heavy lifting. So make sure that you integrate quotations into your own writing rather than just plopping them in and saying, hey, there's my quote, bye. And when you finish a quotation too, you want to linger for a moment and follow up, kind of interpret, explain, analyze. What were readers supposed to get out of those quoted words? So kind of help with the interpretation of the content of the quotation. Within your own research paper in this class, I'm really not looking for headings like this. So if you find it's extremely necessary, fine. But really, if you just write it in traditional essay form, we don't need the kind of subheadings necessarily, all right? And so you can just see throughout the paper, wherever there's a quote, it's led into, then it's clear which words have been taken directly from the text. Then we have a parenthetical citation at the end. Okay. And like here we see crafting 254. That tells us for those 2 Amy Tyson articles, it's not from the Men with Muskets one, it's from the crafting one. So it's clear to me, the reader, if I want to find this information, which article I need to go to. All right. And then as I, go, you can kind of see that there are citations throughout. But back to this works cited page, I want to stress a couple of things for you. Alphabetize the entries. So we have the A names, then we go into the D and the T. So you're going to alphabetize by the first word. And also within the paper, if you are putting the name of the author within a parenthetical citation, let's say, in the text when you're writing, you didn't use the author's name. You just paraphrase something, you took some statistic from an article, and you didn't mention the name of the author. Then when you finish that paraphrase in that parenthetical citation, you would put the name of the author, space, and the page number, if there is a page number. If there isn't one, you just put the name of the author, end parentheses, period. Whatever the first word is of an entry, that's what you would put into the parenthetical citation. So we have the author's name, we have the name of the publication. In the case of a book, I can tell this is a book because the title is in italics, so it's a longer work. So the publisher and the date of publication. This one here's an article, it appeared in American Quarterly, and so on. Putting these kinds of entries together is a total pain in the butt. It's gives you such a headache because it's really persnickety, it's really intricate. This goes here, must include this, must not include this. What I want to tell you is avail yourself of today's modern technology. Online, on a thing called internet, there are citation generator websites. There's Citation Machine. There's been one called Son of Sam. I'm not sure if it's still around. I haven't checked them all out. I think there's a new one that's kind of Scribber. So basically, just put in like MLA Citation Generator. They're going to get choices of websites. And then on that website, you can oftentimes just copy and paste the URL if you found like an article online, copy and paste, and that citation generator website will create all this funky, headache-inducing business for you. Sometimes you have to put in a little bit of the information. Sometimes you have to type the information in, but it formats it for you in a way where you can just copy and paste it right off the website into your document. So please, if you want to get the MLA 8 guidelines off the internet and do it yourself and just be like, okay, for a book, here is what I do. For a online periodical, I do this. For a database thing, I do this. But if you want to do that, that's great if you're up for that challenge. But if you know that you just kind of would like to use your resources, as we'd say, use one of those citation generator sites, okay? I would like to point out to you, in terms of the formatting, the entire page is uniformly double-spaced. And every entry uses something called a hanging indent. And what I mean by that is the first line is flush with the regular left-hand margin. Any line that comes after the first line is indented. This can also be a little bit of a pain to format. If you're doing something where you kind of like go to the end of the first line and you hit return and then you try and like use the space bar or indent. In most word processing programs these days, there's actually like a command that is hanging indent. I know in Word, which I use, you go, if let's say I want to mess with spacing and you go to paragraph and then you can choose single double spacing. In that same little dialog box, I also can choose hanging indent as a spacing choice and it does it for me. So again, you might think like, I don't know if my word processing program has that. You can Google it. You can say, I'm thinking ClarisWorks, which is like old school. But if whatever the name of your word processing program is, like does whatever have hanging indent, that kind of thing. And I also want to say, if you are struggling with even with citation generator websites and you're trying to put together these entries and you don't know what order, what information, what, Google anything. Just Google like MLA online blog citation, and it'll take you to examples or it'll take you to a place that will give you the citation. Another great thing, if you find your sources within like the LSC libraries databases, you really should, by the way, it takes you to good sources, like legitimate, valid academic sources. But if you do that in the databases, if you look off on the sidebars, it used to be on the right-hand sidebar. You know how they're always changing design, could be on the left now. Just look for the words, cite this. So let's say you find an article and you're like, I'm going to use this in my paper. Look for the Cite It button, click it, and it's going to pop up the citation you need for your works cited page right there in the database. Copy and paste it into your document. So basically I'm saying it's not like you're cheating if you use your resources. So just if you don't know how to put together a certain kind of citation, if you have, like I have a government document, I have something from the CDC. What do we do for CDC things? Google MLA citation, CDC, and it's gonna take you 2 pages and examples that tell you what to do. So don't be afraid to just Google, use those citation generators and really make sure that within the body of your paper, we can tell where every bit of information from an outside source came from. And remember, when in doubt, oversight rather than underciting, okay? I'm never going to be mad if you tried too hard to make sure you were being upright, fine, and honest versus not trying so hard and therefore appearing to plagiarize. Okay, enough talking from me. I hope you've watched this, and if you have, you are hardy, brave, and true, and you are to be commended. Onward.